Hi everyone, welcome back to Life After 18. I am Jan. Gotta tell you, I just got off the phone with my son. He calls me once or twice a week and we talk about just all kinds of things. And today I'm not sure how we got on the subject, but he mentioned something that one of his teachers told him in a class about 2 or 3 years ago. Now he's trying to get a degree in business management. Actually, he got that degree in January this year. But this class, I think he said it was either sociology or social economics or something to that. It was required for him to get his degree, so he had to take it. But one of the things that one of the teachers said to him really kind of set him off. The teacher said, statistically speaking, if you were born poor, you are probably going to live and die poor. So Alan, of course, is the only one who raises his hand and calls BS on that. And he said, that is not true. He said, I was raised in a household where we were always told, if you want something bad enough, you want to achieve something bad enough, you will work hard and you'll earn it. You will find a way to earn it. And that's just the way it is. If you tell somebody, like all the kids in this class, that if you're born poor, you're going to die poor, well, then isn't that just telling them what's the point? Why don't you just give up now? I mean, nothing like killing motivation, right? That's really crappy. I can't believe a teacher would say something like that in a class. And he said it's been like 3 or 4 years ago when he took this class, and it still, to this day, kind of pisses him off. And I thought, I don't blame you, Alan. And I told him I was just going to talk about payroll deductions today, but I really wanted to share that with you. I mean, what do you think? Statistics are one thing, but to raise anybody's kids like that, that's just wrong. For teachers to tell students that, and these are young, impressionable students for the most part. He said a lot of them were in their early 20s or so, 20, 21, 22, things like that. Somewhere in their early 30s, and there were even a couple of retirees, of course, who don't care because they're beyond all that. Anyway, that's really, really a bad thing to be talking about in schools. Really need to motivate people. So, to motivate you, we're going to talk about employment. Actually, I don't know if this is going to motivate you, but it's going to educate you. I love to tell people how things work or what things mean. Now, I may not have all the details for every situation, but I give you enough information to where you're going to start asking questions. And that's what you need to do all the time. Ask questions. When I was a kid in the 60s, it was, 60s were a crazy time. Now, I turned 13 in 1970. So that was at the tail end of the 60s, all right? So I was like in that pre-adolescent stage. And I remember, getting up to that point the last few years. Summer of 69 was a big deal. But there was a word that everybody came up with. And I'm guessing it was probably the hippies, or they called them the hippies, the beatniks of the time, whatever. They came up with this word. It was called anti-disestablishmentarianism. And the only word that I think was longer than that was supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Oh my God, I can't believe I can still say that. I won't say it 10 times fast though. Anyway, anti-disestablishmentarianism. And that was all about question authority. Now, I'm not saying you should always question authority. Well, some cases you probably should. Depends on your situation. But I do want to say, question everything. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. It's not that you don't trust somebody or don't believe someone all the time. It's more of a way to learn more about a particular subject or a particular situation. And that's what this is all about, is learning more about a particular subject, making sure you have all the information you need to make good decisions that will affect you probably legally and financially for the rest of your life. So here we go. This is a thing I want to tell you all about today, and that would be payroll deductions. I swear there's nothing more exciting than getting that first paycheck from your very first job. I mean, you look at it and the first thing you think is, oh my God, I'm much. I remember thinking that, looking at it, it's like, even if it was only just $50, I felt like I was a millionaire. But then you start doing the math in your head and you look at how many hours you worked and you multiply that out by your hourly wage. And you look at the amount of your check and you think, wait a minute, this isn't exactly lining up here. Why am I getting less than what I'm calculating in my head? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, I know I worked 40 hours and I know I make $10 an hour, so my check should be for $400, right? Logic says that's right, but hey, it's only $290. Well, what the heck? What happened there? Why is that? So, that's one of those things that nobody really told me about when I went out and got my first job, because before that I was being paid as a babysitter. They would multiply it out, pardon me, and I would get the total amount that I thought I should get. Made sense. So the first time this happened to me, I marched right into my manager's office and I declared, this can't be right. What the heck? I know I worked 40 hours. I know I make $10 an hour. Why is my paycheck not $400? So what happened? Well, that's when he directed me to this little thing attached to my paycheck. And back when we used to get pay stubs, and it was very clear when we got pay stubs, you could look at that little piece of paper and he says, well, you got this deduction, this deduction, this deduction. And yeah, that was all subtracted out. And my next thought is, why? And can I do anything about that? There were things like, like government deductions, income tax, there was Medicare, there was Social Security, there was, I don't remember, I think there was even workman's comp or something on that. And I thought, do I have a choice on any of that? Well, some you do and some you don't. So what I'd like to do is dig a little deeper into any of these payroll deductions. We have 3 different categories. We have mandatory government deductions, we have employer benefits, and we have retirement options. So, starting out with some details about those mandatory government deductions. Those are the ones you can't do anything about. They just happen. And you think, why? I mean, hey, you know what? You're new to this working thing. You're new to payroll taxes. Of course you're going to ask why. And you should ask why if you're not asking. Ask questions. What's this all about? Well, so the government deductions. Well, first you need to understand that the government does not make or sell a product or a service. It's not like you can go to, like governmentstore.com and order up clothing or something like that, like it's an Amazon store. They don't sell products or services, so they have no way of making money. However, on the flip side of that, the government is responsible for paying for certain things, like, I don't know, our military, our schools, libraries, community services, roads, things like that. Thousands of other things the government or some part of the government is responsible to pay for or to take care of. So they got to get this money from somewhere, and your paycheck is one of those options. Now, granted, money comes from a lot of different other things that come into the government, or money comes into the government from a lot of other places. But like I said, your paycheck is a good piece of that. So 2 of those deductions on your paycheck, one's going to be something called FICA, or federal income tax, basically. And if you live in a state that collects state income taxes, you're going to see a line item for state income tax as well. As far as how much that is, well, they basically are a percentage of your paycheck. And that paycheck, that deduction or that amount really depends on how much you earn. So people who earn more, naturally, they pay more. Now, we could get into a whole discussion on that because there's a lot of people saying out there, so many people don't pay their fair share, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you want to get into taxes and how you file income taxes and actually pay those bills, you will also learn that there are a lot of things that you can deduct from your taxable income, but that's a whole nother story. And I am not a tax accountant. I just want to tell you, this is how this works. That's what these deductions are for. And basically, as I said, it comes down to your state income tax and your federal income tax are calculated based on how much money you earn. That's it. If you want to know more details, you can call H&R Block, you can go to TurboTax, talk to a tax professional, and they're going to look at your pay stub, and give you exact information on your situation. So, enough of that one. Now, there's another mandatory government deduction that is called Social Security. And then there's another one called Medicare. A lot of people say that these are entitlement programs that old people get to use. I don't know about calling it an entitlement program, because if you look at your pay stub, you will see Social Security is being deducted out of your paycheck. That means you are putting money into Social Security. It's basically the government's retirement plan for each American citizen that pays into it. That's how it works. And similar to your federal income tax, it is deducted. It's a percentage of your pay that is deducted. So people who make more have more deducted that goes into Social Security. And the idea is that the government, or whoever's taking the Social Security, there's a whole department on this in the government, right? The idea is that they're taking this money, they're putting it into an account under your name, and theoretically, they are investing it. So over a period of 20 or 30 years until you retire, that money should be growing, not only from your contributions to it, but from the investments that this department is making for you. Then, when you decide to retire at 62 and a half, that's the minimum age where you can retire. Although that might be changing, so don't hold me to that age. But either way, when you do retire and you're allowed to collect this, you will get this money back. Now, keep in mind, this is not the full amount of your full paycheck that you were making all those years. It's going to be a fraction of the amount that you were making all those years. And you only get it once a month. You don't get paid every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks or whatever it is that you're probably getting used to now. No, you only get that check once a month. And it usually falls in on the day of your birthday within that month. So if your birthday fell on the 10th of the month, then that's generally when your Social Security check will show up. So that's kind of interesting. Since it is a fraction, though, of what you're normally used to earning, your first thought is probably, well, how am I going to live on that? So if you're making like $60,000 a year now and you're only going to collect maybe $800 a month in Social Security, yeah, that sounds a little unreasonable, right? It is. You're not imagining things. This is why I encourage everybody to pay off their cars, pay off all their credit card debt, or just don't run that up in the first place. Buy a house if you can, so that you pay that off. And by the time you're retired, you no longer have a house payment. Thus, you no longer have a rent payment / mortgage, whatever you want to call it. And then you can live on that $800 or $900 a month, or $1,200, or whatever it's going to be. Like I said, everybody makes a different amount based on what they were earning while they were working. All right, enough of that. Medicare. That would be the government's form of health insurance. You will pay into that, as I say. I don't know if that's a percentage of what you're earning. I've never really looked at it because it's been so long. And I retired a few years ago, and honestly, I'm one of those people that didn't pay attention to it, which was really sad. But I do know that I'm still paying for it. The monthly premiums for Medicare, even though I paid into it all those years for like 35, 40 years, I'm still paying those premiums now. It comes out of my Social Security. So that's not a freebie. Maybe that's why I get a little irritated when somebody talks about giving everybody free Medicare. Somebody else. It's like every time you get free Medicare there, or free anything actually from the government, there's somebody working to pay that for you. Keep that one in mind. Anyway, Medicare, interesting thing about that, and I learned this when I turned 65. I didn't want to pay for Medicare. I had my own private healthcare insurance, and it seemed to be doing really well for me. And I thought, well, why should I get Medicare? Can I just not get that? Yeah, it turns out you can't. It's kind of mandatory. I thought that was really odd. And I have to pay for it. I had a really good health insurance. It was a lot cheaper than Medicare. I don't know, but all I'm doing here is I'm telling you how things work. This is how it works. Medicare, that is another one of those payroll deductions. When you're 65, you are going to be kind of pushed into enrolling into it, and that will be your health insurance. And then you'll still have to get another supplemental health insurance because that Medicare, it doesn't cover everything 100%. Oh, I love the irony of that one. Anyway, between Medicare and Social Security, I can't say this often enough. There's a lot of speculation on whether or not it's even going to be around when you're ready to retire in 20 or 30 or 40 years, whenever it is. And even if it's around, it's hard to say how much is going to be left. So I would encourage you to ask your employer about other retirement options that you can put money into yourself. And that's another payroll deduction I'll talk about here in just a few minutes. All right. Another one that's kind of a mandatory payroll deduction. It's called workman's compensation. And I don't know that it's mandatory per se. It's basically an insurance company that covers your employer. Covers your employer's ass. It's an insurance that the employer has to have in order to cover yours and their expenses if you get hurt on the job. So if you drive a forklift and you drop something on somebody's foot and you break their foot and they're in the hospital, workman's compensation will pay for that person's medical bills. Okay? All states have different requirements as to how much insurance they have to have for this workman's comp, and that makes sense. They also may or may not pass some of that cost on to the employee. Bigger companies, they cover the whole cost of it. You never see a line item on your pay stub for this one. But smaller companies, you will see that you're contributing to that insurance for them. So, alrighty then. Next. So let me see. That was required government or mandatory government payroll deductions. Now we have employer benefits. Well, these are kind of good ones, actually. And they depend on a couple of things, though. Are you a full-time worker or part-time worker? And how big is the company that you work for? Those two things will determine what kind of employer benefits you actually get or get to take advantage of. All right, most part-time workers, and that would be anybody who works less than 40 hours a week, are probably not going to be eligible to get any kind of employer benefits, such as health care or any of those other things. Some full-time workers don't get them either because maybe they're working for a small family-owned business. And if the company is that small, the state doesn't require that you provide benefits for your employees. So, yeah, you kind of have to ask questions on that one too. Find out, what they have, what they don't have. Do some digging, find out what your state's requirements are for these kinds of benefits. Yeah, I hate for you to raise hell about it with a family-owned business. I mean, because a lot of times they're just doing what they can to get by. Family-owned businesses, they don't always make a lot of money. Now, some do. I mean, a lot of big businesses now started out as small family-owned businesses. And of course, I can't think of a single one right now, but I'm sure it'll come to me sometime here. Anyway, so keep that in mind. Mid-sized companies, I worked for mid-sized companies most of my life. Surprisingly enough, they were actually family-owned too, which was weird. They offered these kind of benefits, but I had to pay a portion of the cost of these benefits. Now, if you go to work for a larger company, perhaps maybe Amazon, that's Walmart, big name companies like that, they will probably cover the entire cost of these benefits. And they may still show up as a payroll deduction, even if you're not paying a part of it. But they just want you to know what's going toward your benefits, whether it's healthcare, dental, vision, or whatever it is. Interesting thing about that, just a little tip, that cost, sometimes it's considered part of your salary package when it comes to negotiating your salary. I've seen that happen in one or two companies I've worked for. So, for instance, what I'm trying to say is if they offer you $50,000 a year, $5,000 of that might be the cost of the benefits they're paying on your behalf. Interesting, right? So when you're interviewing and you're discussing salary, you're to that part of the interview, ask questions about that. When they say, I'm gonna pay you $60,000 or $80,000 a year, ask how much of that is in benefits. And they might surprise you and say, oh no, you'll get another $10,000 in benefits. That would be cool, right? So I like that. Anyway, you should know about that. So let's dig deeper into those employer benefits. What do we get? You might have health care, which is, doctor's visits, surgeries, things like that. You might have dental insurance. That's your annual cleanings, fillings, crowns, things like that. You might have vision care insurance. Of course, that covers for your eye exams usually, new glasses, new lenses in the glasses. Sometimes it covers contacts. Again, you have to ask questions on that. Those three are pretty self-explanatory. Healthcare, dental, vision. But there are two more that aren't as common. One is called, oh boy, I just flubbed that one up. Long-term healthcare insurance, as well as a flex plan. Now, long-term healthcare insurance, that's an insurance that covers you and possibly your living expenses if you get some sort of long-term illness or injury. So that could have been you got in a car accident. It's going to take you a while for everything to heal, broken bones, internal organs, whatever it is. Could be a disease. I'm thinking Lyme disease. A friend of mine actually got that I used to work with, and she was out of work for like 8 months, I think. So she had, luckily, long-term healthcare insurance, and that paid her living expenses while she was out. And then her medical insurance covered all her treatments for that. So it was kind of nice. It could also cover cancer. Okay, so long-term healthcare insurance, kind of a cool thing. It's not a mandatory insurance required by any place or any state I've ever worked in. I've worked in 3 states. So it was not mandatory, it was optional. Since it was optional, the company was not obligated to pay the monthly premium for that. So that came out of my paycheck as a payroll deduction as well. And it was expensive too. Interesting thing about that is when I decided to cancel that insurance, because it was running me about $170 a month. That was a lot of money. Oh, for me, and then another $170 for my husband. So it was very expensive. I finally thought, you know what? I'm just going to put that money into my retirement account instead of putting it into this insurance. I don't know. Was that a risky decision? I don't know. So far, it seems to have worked out because I'm no longer working there. So if you cancel it, or if you leave the company, you get nothing. So I paid all that money in, and there was no cash value when I canceled the policy. Now, if I had kept the policy until I quit the company, there was an option where I could continue paying for it on my own, and I could have kept the policy. But that didn't work out that way. So anyway, keep that in mind. Again, it's one of those things. Ask a lot of questions, find out, what it's going to cost. Sometimes it's based on your age. Sometimes it's based on your medical history. And and find out what it covers exactly. So long-term healthcare insurance, very good insurance if you can get it and if you can afford it. Flex plan, that's another deduction. That is not really an insurance policy per se, This is basically a medical savings account that your employer manages for you. You tell them that you want to have so much taken out every month, put into this account, and they will do that. And when you need it, for a lot of things, actually, basically medical and health related expenses that your insurance doesn't cover. That's really what it is. So it could be deductibles for office visits, for medications that you might be taking, chiropractic visits. I know my chiropractor was never covered by my medical insurance, so I used to submit the bill to have my flex plan pay for my chiropractic. And I knew I was going to see the chiropractor every morning, so I knew to tell my employer to take $80 out of my paycheck every month from my chiropractor. And if I saw him once a month, great. If I saw him twice a month, that was covered too. It was kind of cool. And you think, why would I do that? Well, because that money is deducted from your paycheck before taxes. You know, those federal income taxes are calculated. So it lowers your taxable income, which means you pay less taxes. Yay! This is a great plan. If you have the opportunity to do it, do it. Highly recommend it. It is wonderful. All right, so we got the mandatory government deductions, we got benefits, and now the last category of payroll deductions that you'll possibly see on your paycheck will be retirement options. Now, if your employer offers the option to set up your own personal retirement account, such as a 401k, I encourage you to do this. This is something that you may depend on when you retire, either instead of Social Security or in addition to Social Security. And remember what I said about that. We don't know if it's going to be around when you retire. Nobody knows that. And if it is, we don't know how much is going to be there. So I highly encourage you, if your employer offers these, to set up a retirement account. There's a 401k, there's a 401k Roth. The 401k is they take money out of your paycheck before taxes. And as I said, that lowers your taxable income, so you don't have to pay as many taxes when it comes that time of the year. But then there's the 401k Roth, and that can be deducted after your taxes are deducted from your paycheck. Pros and cons to both. My son, interesting thing, I found out he has one of each set up. I thought that was really funny. He goes, well, Mom, I couldn't decide, so I picked one of each. You tell your employer how much you want to put into one of these accounts. He puts some in because, let me see, like I said, the first one, it lowers your taxable income right now because it's done before taxes. But the other one, you've already paid taxes on it, so when you withdraw it in 30 years, you don't have to pay taxes on it. And I'll tell you what, I'm at that point where I'm retired. Kind of would have been nice if I had thought that through because I don't like paying income taxes on mine right now. Anyway, up to you. Talk to a tax person, talk to a financial planner, figure out what's going to work best for you in your situation. These ultimately, though, are great payroll deductions because they're your options. They benefit you specifically. Nobody else gets this money. I absolutely love them. Now, there are a couple other retirement options. One's a pension. Everybody does this a little bit differently. That's even if they offer them anymore. I've only worked for one company in my entire life that had this, and I wasn't fully vested in it by the time I left the company, so I got nothing out of that pension. But the cool thing about this is, if a company has it, generally speaking, they're the ones that put all the money in that account. And you don't have to put anything in it. Now, again, they might put a line item showing how much goes into your pension. And as I said with the, what was the other one I mentioned? Where, oh yeah, the healthcare benefits. That might be listed as part of your compensation package when you're negotiating for a salary pay. Okay. So, and I lied. I said there were a couple others. That's pretty much it. So I know I'm looking at my notes. I always have my notes here because I don't memorize all this stuff. I talk about it often enough. You think I would, right? But I like to have my notes. Anyway, just to kind of wrap things up, you can see some of these deductions are optional, some are not. But I hope this information helps you to understand the difference, and then moving forward helps you to make some well-informed decisions about your future. And that's really what this is all about. Yeah, every employer does something different, but now you're armed with enough information to make good decisions, ask a lot of questions. Now you know what you should be asking questions about, right? And that'll all help you to decide what options are going to be good for you personally and financially now and 20 or 30 years from now. All right, that's it for today. Learn more about this and so many other things by signing up for classes on lifeafter18.com. You can also follow me, though, on Facebook. Life After 18 is my Facebook page, but I'm also on Instagram, TikTok, and X. And I'm on there under the accounts Janet M, as in Martha, Nast, like nasty. Janet M. Nast. That is my handle on, again, Instagram, TikTok, and X. And I share a lot of tips on those different social media accounts. So, other than that, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions on things you'd like to hear me talk about, feel free to email me, jan@lifeafter18.com. That's it for today. Y'all have a great afternoon. Bye for now.